The laughter started before anyone realized it would stop. It echoed off the padded walls of the gym, sharp and careless, the kind of laughter that comes when people believe they are untouchable. In the center of the mat stood a black belt champion, muscles carved by years of praise and trophies, his confidence loud enough to fill the room. Near the doorway, half hidden by a mop bucket and the smell of disinfectant, stood the cleaning lady in her faded uniform, eyes lowered, spine tired from a life that had never given her the luxury of pride. When he motioned toward her as a joke and asked her to fight, no one expected the silence that would come next. No one imagined that within minutes, the gym would feel smaller, heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Before the story goes any further, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that you should never judge a soul by their uniform or their silence, then like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter because people like her exist all around us. The cleaning lady's name was Rosa Martinez, though very few people in the gym knew it. To most, she was simply part of the background, arriving before sunrise and leaving long after the last student had gone home. Her days began while the city still slept, hands stiff from arthritis, feet aching before the sun even touched the windows. She wiped sweat from mirrors that reflected dreams she never got to chase, swept chalk dust from floors where young fighters imagined glory. No one asked her questions, and she learned long ago not to offer answers. Life had taught her that silence was safer. Rosa had not always been invisible. Decades earlier, in a different country in a harder time, she had trained in martial arts not for sport or medals, but for survival. As a young woman, she had lived through violence that carved fear deep into her bones. Training had been her shield, discipline her escape, but when life demanded she choose between dreams and feeding her children, dreams lost every time. Injuries piled up, responsibilities multiplied, and slowly the fighter inside her learned to sleep. She carried that past like a scar under clothing, unseen, unacknowledged, but still very real. The gym where she worked prided itself on champions. Posters of belt ceremonies and tournament wins lined the walls. The students admired strength, speed, dominance. The black belt who mocked her that day was the embodiment of everything the gym celebrated. He had talent, fame within the local circuit, and a following that fed his ego daily. When he noticed Rosa watching practice from the corner, as she waited for a break in the drills to mop the floor, something in him decided to entertain himself. He gestured toward her, smiling, turning her into a prop for amusement. At first Rosa did not react. Years of being overlooked had taught her to shrink, to become smaller than the room. But when the laughter swelled and eyes fixed on her, something stirred. Not anger exactly, but a deep, old memory of who she had once been, and why she had learned to fight in the first place. She stepped forward slowly, her movements careful, her face calm. The room expected clumsiness, fear, maybe embarrassment. What they saw instead was control. The black belt approached casually, certain this would end in seconds. What happened next did not explode, it unfolded. Rosa moved with efficiency, conserving energy, her balance rooted, her awareness sharp. She did not attack with flash or cruelty. She simply responded. A shift of weight, a redirection of force, a lock applied with precision that came not from youth but from experience. The laughter died mid-breath. The sound that replaced it was the soft thud of reality settling in. The gym fell silent because silence was the only response left. Students stared, instructors froze, and the black belt found himself restrained, confused not by pain but by the sudden collapse of certainty. Rosa released him almost immediately, stepping back as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. She did not bow, did not smile. She simply returned to her mop, hands steady, heart racing beneath the calm surface. What followed was not applause, it was discomfort. People shifted, avoided eye contact, confronted something they did not know how to name. The champion's confidence cracked, replaced by humiliation that had nowhere to go. In that moment, the gym's hierarchy unraveled. Strength no longer belonged solely to the loudest or the youngest. It belonged to someone who had carried it quietly for years. Rosa finished her shift that day with the same routine she always followed. She cleaned the bathrooms, emptied the trash, locked the doors. Yet inside her, something had changed. The fighter she thought was gone had reminded her she was still there, not to prove anything to others, but to herself. She went home that night and slept deeper than she had in years. The next morning, the gym owner asked to speak with her. Fear crept in, old and familiar, the fear that speaking up or standing out always brought consequences. But instead of reprimand, there was respect. The owner had watched the security footage, not to punish but to understand. He saw skill, discipline, and restraint that could not be taught quickly or cheaply. He offered Rosa a chance, not as a cleaner, but as a coach for self-defense classes focused on women, seniors, and those who trained not to win medals but to feel safe. Rosa hesitated. Years of invisibility had convinced her that opportunities were traps, but something inside her, awakened on that mat, told her that saying no would mean going back to sleep forever. She accepted, cautiously, stepping into a role she had once believed was lost to time. The first classes were small, a handful of women, nervous and unsure of themselves as Rosa once had been. She taught them patience before power, awareness before aggression. She shared lessons learned not in tournaments, but in alleys, kitchens, and moments where fear tried to take over. Her voice was soft, but her presence was unshakable. Word spread, not through advertising, but through transformation. Students stood taller, spoke louder, smiled more. The black belt avoided the gym for weeks. When he returned, he kept his head down, training quietly, stripped of arrogance. Eventually, he watched one of Rosa's classes from the sidelines. What he saw unsettled him more than the defeat. He saw respect, community, and a kind of strength his trophies had never given him. Over time, he apologized, not publicly, but sincerely. Rosa accepted without ceremony. Forgiveness, she knew, was another form of power. Months passed, and the gym changed. The posters still hung, but new faces filled the space. Elderly men learning balance, teenagers learning discipline, women learning confidence. Rosa no longer arrived before sunrise to scrub floors. She arrived to unlock doors, greeted by smiles and names spoken with warmth. Her uniform changed, but her humility remained. Near the end of her first year as a coach, the gym held a small event. Not a tournament, but a demonstration. Rosa stood at the edge of the mat, watching her students move with confidence they once lacked. Tears filled her eyes, not from pride alone, but from the realization that her pain had become purpose, that the years of silence had led to a voice that mattered. If this story has touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that strength often hides in plain sight, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps stories like Rosa's reach others who feel invisible. And before this story ends, leave a comment. Write one word that describes what you felt, or share a moment when you underestimated someone or were underestimated yourself. Those comments matter more than you know. The gym that once laughed learned a lesson that day, one that echoed far beyond the mats. It learned that dignity does not announce itself, that power does not always seek attention, and that the quietest people often carry the deepest strength. Rosa never became famous. She never wanted to. What she gained was something far greater, the knowledge that her life, every scar and sacrifice had meaning, and long after the laughter faded, long after the silence passed, what remained was respect.